Good afternoon. I know we're perilously close to lunch, so I'll make my comments uncharacteristically brief. My name is Eric Garland. I'm the Executive Director of Competitive Futures, which is a consultancy that provides intelligence analysis to governments and corporations around the world. Given the implications of the recent report of the OIG Health and Human Services, the report that just came out about governance and foster care, I'll just boil it down here. Good news and bad news. The bad news is that not having governance in place to keep track of kids is good news for one group of people, organized crime. They are principally behind most of the trafficking, according to the United Nations. So when you lose kids out of that system, for whatever reason, that's who picks up the slack. And it's a very profitable business. Now, the good news is you have the power to help shut that business down. Those crimes can be prosecuted, and it needs documentation and data from you, or rather, from the people you were questioning here. I've actually provided written commentary that goes into this in greater detail. That's the long and the short of it. Not having the documentation for whatever reason there allows these children to go into these systems that might be regional, might be national, or even global. The United Nations says that of all trafficking, of all persons, that's adults and children, 50% of that trafficking is for sexual exploitation. And that can be cash pay services or for the production of child sex abuse media. So it's a pretty big problem, and it's all over the world right now. Now, I'll just leave you just some good news on where that data is going to go. Putting so much of this stuff online, whether it's illicit media or the fact that we're all carrying devices that have GPS trackers, there is more evidence out there to submit to law enforcement around the world than there has ever been before in the history of civilization. And many of the worst criminals here organize via these digital devices, whether it's the sale, using cryptocurrency to buy illicit media, all from a dark net, which is being very well observed by international law enforcement, or communicating with each other about who they're trafficking, where they're going, and why, using hardened and supposedly secure devices that were in fact designed by the FBI. There was a couple of networks that were taken down that way, where 13,000 of the top organized crime bosses and lieutenants were all using this, thinking that they were not being heard, when in fact every single message they were sending was being sent directly to the FBI. That's in the past 12 to 24 months that these things have come forth. All of that data leaves an opportunity to identify who's been victimized, identify who did the victimizing, and give that to relevant prosecutors and put them in prison and rescue the people that need rescuing. That can only happen when you have pictures of the children that come into the system for the worst of reasons, the most heartbreaking of reasons to begin with, and then to be able to provide the picture of them, birth dates, other identifiers, when they leave for whatever reason, and get that into the system of international law enforcement, national, federal law enforcement. Start there with that data, and then you can help take down the bad guys. So that's the good news and the future you can drive towards. I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for this witness?
Real quick, so are you from Missouri? How did you get here to this hearing? I'm just curious.
I live in St. Louis. I'm originally from Vermont, and I worked in Washington, D.C. for 12 years, where still a lot of my work comes out of.
And this is your specialty?
Actually, in doing analysis of larger trends in society, technology, economics, politics for corporate and government clients, we look at risk and opportunity, and one of the strategic level risks is transnational organized crime, which I've been tracking for 25 years at different levels, but it's become very intense in the last 5 to 10.
So in your professional opinion, how does Missouri rank? I mean, as with this OIG report of our data collection, in your professional opinion, I think it's catastrophic. I think we are in a crisis mode, and I've been saying this for a long time.
This is the crossroads of America in all the good ways and all the worst ways. And organized crime here has been well known since Prohibition and before. Given that human trafficking is done by organized crime syndicates that are increasingly connected to global syndicates, there's a lot of subtlety as to who you're dealing with. You can have smaller groups that are still organized that deal with or have to answer to a larger syndicate. It would depend. It gets to be a sophisticated question. But I believe federal law enforcement would tell you that Missouri is a hotspot of trafficking because of all the modalities of transportation. And I would think because of the laxity of law enforcement here. When you hear that they're just not interested in looking for lost children, what do they do all day? What is their job exactly if lost children doesn't come under their purview for law enforcement? That provides a very rich environment for organized criminals to take advantage of systems. And the thing about bad guys is they have a long time to practice, and there's a lot of money in it for them. And they get good at thinking about these things.
Okay. Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any further witnesses?